Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, welcome to the Sit Down. I'm your man, Rod Love, and we have with me tonight, and as well as every Monday night from 6 to 6:45 on the Sit Down. Hey, Miss Wynn, how are you doing?
I am doing well. How are you today?
I'm doing great. And guess what? We have the illustrious Doc Polite with us tonight, and boy, he spoke in the brim that I want. Doc, how you doing this evening?
Hey, I'm living. Can't complain. Mm-hmm. How was y'all weekend?
My weekend was pretty good. No complaints. I'm still here. I'm alive and blessed and highly favored.
Hey, Doc, what you don't hear is she dealing with some grandma issues with them grandbabies, so she a little frustrated, but she'll be all right. She'll be just
grandma
fine.
Issues? What kind of issues you got, grandma?
No, I ain't gonna let her kick herself in the behind. I'm not gonna let her do that. Hey, Doc, she just has some of those grandma issues dealing with them grandbabies, but you know what? She gonna be all right.
Yes, and that falls under one of our topics this evening.
Oh yeah. Hey, but you know what? Just to give everybody a recap, hey, welcome to the Sit Down. The Sit Down is a show that takes place every Monday from 6 to 6:45. What we do is we engage community-based organizations. We have you come in the studio to tell your constituents what you can do for them, how you can support them. But beyond and above anything else, it's all about self-help. Because we heard in Doc and Attorney Jackson and now Ms. Wynn, we'll be having you in the loop on the weekend when we're doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, talking about what's happening in the world.
Okay.
But
that sounds good.
This show is dedicated to, people talk about, you see a man and you feed a man, he eats for a day. Mm-hmm. You teach a man how to fish, he can feed himself for a lifetime.
Yes.
But I just heard one more.
What's that?
I heard the next one that basically says, okay, you can feed a man, you can teach a man how to fish, and he can feed himself for a lifetime. But then you teach that man how to buy the pond that he's getting the fish out of, and his whole family eat for generations. What do you think about that, Doc?
I think we need to get to teaching people how to own ponds. I agree, because one of the things that we have to remember is that we did not get a head start like others. And so we sometimes kick ourselves or say we're not able to do things, but we got to remember in reality we did have that setback or that delay in us getting opportunities to thrive. And even when we did, the undercurrent in this country sought to deny us and take away what we had built. There are, we talk about Rosewood and we talk about Tulsa, but there are literally thousands and thousands of examples of the same thing happening to black settlement towns and cities after Reconstruction. So we have to understand that there's a city, a black city under the 408. You guys don't even know that, do you?
Don't know it.
It's called Jonestown.
Jonestown, but
it was called Jonestown.
At the end of the day, we are pushing people to be self-reliant, be independent.
Yes.
What we're giving to you is self-help.
Yes.
And so, hey Doc, with that, since you talked about what do you call it, a black town or a black city?
Yeah.
Well, we hadn't had this conversation, but is there such a thing as a black job? No. No.
Exactly. So and there's really
before we go down the path, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, but really, I'm just talking about the heritage of of our people. I'm not advocating for, and I know that's not what you're implying, but I'm not. I want people to understand that I'm not advocating for the development of black cities that we bring segregation back. What I'm saying is the foundation that was there. We that's not our launching pad. We don't have a launching pad, so to speak.
And I support you, Doc, because what you said is, real important because you mentioned the word heritage.
Right.
Heritage and culture
Yes.
are important.
Yes.
But
Right.
you know what? With that being said, we started probably a couple of weeks ago when the question came up from somebody that was watching the show. And they brought up, what do you tell a young man or a young woman that's coming up? They're living in impoverished situations, and they're saying, how do I get out of the circumstances that I'm in?
Navigate this world.
Navigate this, yeah. And so what we decided to do is, and I give Doc Polite this credit, he did some research.
Okay.
There's this thing called evidence-based, and then some people call it best practices, whatever you want to call it. These are things that have been proven that if they're done with certain fidelity, that they'll work.
Yes.
What we're gonna do is we're gonna tag team right here. And Doc, what do we call it? Because it's not the building of a. You remember that movie Frankenstein? Hey, so she must be real young, Doc.
What we're doing is developing what's called an avatar or a persona. And what that means is we are taking the ideal young man
Or young woman.
or young woman who would need to have mentoring to change their life for the better long term. So we're taking them from one environment to succeeding in a different set or a different arena than the one that they come from, and making sure that they have all of the skills and knowledge to continue to build from there. Because
And
oftentimes,
this is in part like a virtual mentor.
it's really a virtual person. We're building the ideal. What would this student?
Yeah, and we invite faith organizations, we invite fraternities, sororities, or just individuals to contribute to this conversation and to contribute to the building. So, Doc, over the last couple of weeks, we talked about educational inequality. We've also talked about violence and crime. We talked about poverty, and we talked about some of the things, characteristics of it. We talked about what you can do to build yourself, some fortitude. And today, Doc, we got two other topics that we're gonna have the open discussion about, and that's health disparities and family instability. So, hey, Ms. Wynn, Doc, y'all can jump off whichever one y'all want to jump into this.
Okay, let's talk about health disparities, because oftentimes people don't think that health is a key component of living. Especially when it comes to young people. We think all young people are healthy and should not be saddled with heart disease, diabetes, or mental health challenges, and that's not the case anymore. We have many African Americans, young African Americans, who are subject to numerous allergies, obesity, asthma.
But Doc, just don't skirt past them. Slow them down, man, when you talk about it, because we talk about mental health all the time.
So oftentimes, let's start with the health. Let's talk about allergies, and people don't think about this. Your environment is key to you not developing allergies. And what I mean by that is that the more you're exposed to toxins, the weaker your immune system can become or be compromised, right? And that opens you up to asthma and other allergies. It really does. I'm allergic to. I just say I'm allergic to Florida. I got some. I got over 25 allergies.
And Doc, so, Doc, Miss Wynn, when we talk about allergies, and Doc brought up something, and I think we need to kind of, if we can, break it down. But there's some environmental, like Doc mentioned, toxins that if you're living in a community and there's a dump in that community,
Right.
so
Yes.
you're smelling, you're intaking what's coming from that
Every
dump.
day.
Right.
That's an environment.
And that's key. We poor people tend to live in older homes that has lead, asbestos,
Lead.
okay, and other long-term chemicals. They're more likely to be located near, like we're saying, environmental dumps or toxic water tables and all of that, because that land is cheaper. So cheaper, that land is allocated for who can afford less. So we may have a city dump next to an impoverished community, and this is nationwide. This isn't just particular.
Doc, now you know if the general was here, Attorney Greg Jackson, now he'd be probably going in a because you use Doc used the word allocated, and I know he didn't mean to use that word because on another show we often talk about there's some things that you can do to have a voice in what comes into your community. So I know that was just I understand what Doc was saying.
Well, but the reality is that allocated was the wrong word. I would
I got
say,
your back, brother.
I would say located near, and this is not a racial thing. That's what I want to point out. It's a thing about economics, because those dumps get that land cheaper near communities who out there lack the ability to protest or the means to protest and redirect that somewhere else. That community can't afford to go to court and fight against an entity locating that in the community near them.
Okay, but Doc, stay on that. The point that you were on about environmental and health disparities and toxins. So that environmental is one.
Right. And we have to understand that that's very powerful. We have the school, we have schools that are located sometimes near contaminated sources or downwind or in proximity to. We've got cities where the entire water system is compromised.
I'm going to jump in on another side besides the environment. I'm going to the obesity and health problems. And I think a lot of that has to do also with your family history. That's very important to understand your family history, because my dad, his mom had diabetes. My dad had diabetes. So now I'm checking myself to make sure I don't have it. And then I'm telling my kid, you need to check also. So we kind of know some of that family history.
And being conscious of understanding eating and dietary
Yes.
Well,
habits.
see-
Stuff that we take for granted. But
Do
going back
you
to
think-
that's
do you-
part? Go ahead, Doc.
Do you think that diabetes is a disease or behavior?
Both.
Both. Because to me, when I think of that, I think of my grandmother and her mom, and the way that they were, the cooking, the cooking of all of this fat food, and it has to do with a lot of food of what you eat. But back then, eating those neck bones and all of that,
And so that's
potentially
choice.
caused that.
That's choice, and that's why it's behavioral.
But
See-
I
see-
respectfully disagree with
Okay,
with my buddy.
that ain't gonna change the fact that it's behavioral because you
I like the
disagree with it. But listen, okay, this is okay. Type 1.
Okay, now what you want to eat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I listened to what he had to say.
Type
And
1.
He
Listen.
respectfully said that ain't gonna change the fact that it's behavior. But on top of the fact that you can have a behavior that leads to diabetes, which is in fact, look it up in the dictionary, a disease. So based on your behavior, you can prevent having this disease become part of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay,
catch
so
it
so
early.
so if the behavior controls it, it's not a disease. A disease is something that's beyond your control.
hey, to our sit down audience, let me just tell you, I love Doc like a brother, and even when he's wrong, I still love him like a brother. Because and if there's anybody in the audience, you can look us up on Facebook. You can look us up on YouTube and watch this show. Please, we welcome your comments in there. But if you have a certain type of behavior that leads to obesity, and that behavior that behavior is an assortment of different things. It can be an eating disorder as well as a health disorder to where you're not
but
getting up
Rod,
and
I'm saying,
see what he does?
yeah. But listen, I'm making a distinction because what we've done in this country is we've created escape avenues for responsibility in many of the situations we deal with. We say we're born this way. I can't help it. It's hereditary. And many of the things that we are claiming as hereditary or you can't help it, you actually can. It's choice-based.
You know what?
It is absolutely choice-based. And again, diabetes, type 2 diabetes is choice-based. Okay? Because you can stop and change your diet and never deal with it again.
Hey, so Miss Wynn, so here's what I like
So
to say
if diet can change it,
and it's a disease.
If diet,
based on what my brother's saying, then why don't he stop inviting me over, talking about come on over and let's eat these oxtails and collard greens.
Do you have diabetes?
No, I don't, and thank God I don't, and I hope that I do not get it based on my behaviors.
I had diabetes. And now I don't have diabetes.
You had type 2?
I'm diabetes prone still because when I was full-fledged diabetes, what that did was alter the chemistry of my pancreas, which creates insulin. So now I have to monitor my intake of carbohydrates and sugars so that I don't go back into it.
Hey,
you understand? And that's by modifying my behavior of eating late.
Go ahead.
You know, I'm saying when you said you're not diabetic anymore, but I'm thinking on the lines of my ancestors.
Yeah. All that I'm with you. But go back to the fact, because now we're debating the fact, is diabetes based on behavior or based on it being a disease? We said both.
Both.
And Doc said it's behavior. So
It's behavior. Because anything that you can take, any illness that you can change simply by doing something different is not considered a disease. For diagnosis purposes, a doctor will classify it as such. Okay. They will classify that because that's a simple lexicon that most people are gonna believe that it fits in, but it's actually not a disease in the manner that leukemia and sickle cell and others are. Okay. See, this is choice based. So you can choose to be a diabetic or not, unless you're a type 1. You're born with that, and that simply means your body will never create insulin.
Then that brings us back to the point where it could be both.
It could be both. But you know what? Even though I'm not gonna try to hurt Doc's feelings when he's wrong, I'm respectfully gonna go do the research.
Hey, see how he say I'm wrong? He just declared me wrong.
Can I say this? Hey, can I get this out?
He just declared me wrong, and I'm declaring him wrong.
Okay. I did say he was. No. Okay. Well. Okay.
What you find
Based
out?
on fact checking,
Okay.
yes, diabetes is a chronic metabolic disease that affects how your body processes food into energy. It occurs when the pancreas does not produce enough insulin or when the body can't use the insulin it produces properly. It clearly says that it's a disease, but I also agree with
I
Doc that it's a disease
and that
it's
is for
part behavior too.
that's for the purpose of general public understanding.
For the purpose of general public understanding.
Oh,
Right, because you have to. Sometimes you have to dumb stuff down because Americans we ain't got the smartest people in the world here. I'm being serious. I'm being serious. Listen,
on this topic.
listen. I'm being very serious. You have to dumb a lot of stuff down. The average American only functions at the eighth grade level.
You don't think I'm serious about saying that both behavior is a behavior and a disease? You don't think I'm? Hey, and then if you throw in some other things, that when you talk environmental, Doc, we talked about living near environmental hazards, toxins that Doc talked about that I'm gonna give him credit for. But then there's another what I would call self-imposed exposure to toxins, and that's when you have individuals that are taking in either secondhand smoke or they're smoking directly. That's a direct hazard to a health disparity. Another one that you can talk about that some of us participate in the libations of, and we're talking about.
So why don't we call smoking a disease?
That's what I was just. It's smoking. I just said that.
It's not a disease.
Okay.
well, what is it? But
It's a habit. It's a choice.
Okay. So what comes?
You can't choose diseases, y'all. That's my point.
All right. You know what? He got us with words because smoking.
You can't
is not
choose a
in
disease.
itself a disease. Smoking is a behavior, which that behavior can lead to
someone
a disease.
else.
No, it can lead to a direct disease when we talk about cancer, when we talk about secondhand smoke, and then you have some individuals that never smoked in their life and
comes up with cancer.
And get cancer, but they get cancer.
Yes.
But it's not smoking related cancer. It's just cancer. They get the disease.
But
they don't choose the disease.
Playing with words.
They don't choose to engage in the behavior that will cause that disease. They get it. There's no controllable factor.
Is not a disease, but
there's no controllable factor in getting lupus or sickle cell or leukemia or many cancers. So I'm telling you, it's avoidance. It's responsibility avoidance. But let's move on. We'll agree to disagree. Now, we're gonna agree to disagree. Oh, Mondo muted you.
So he come in with a brand new brim and jacket.
He is going all tonight.
Yeah, I don't know what got into him, but I was agreeing.
I know.
No, but I was agreeing.
Well, you having a moment of cognitive dissonance. And
I don't know what you're talking about now. I'm not hesitating.
It's okay. But let's move on. So we talk about healthcare.
So when we talk about
we talk about the healthcare.
And then
so Ms. Quee, what else you found out about healthcare?
I was agreeing with him that smoking was not a disease, but then I looked up a number of different researches, and it says yes, smoking is considered a disease by many definitions, including the addictiveness of smoking as a disease. So it's a behavior-driven disease.
Yes.
It's a behavior causation disease. It's caused by your behavior, meaning your behavior is behavior a choice.
It is a choice, but also, Doc, is when you look at behavior, and we've talked about mental health before. And you know what? This is one of the things that we've talked about on many shows, Doc, that people kind of are moving away from what mental health used to be to people, that it was a shame to go ask somebody for help. Now, it's not only highly encouraged, it's being made available, and in some instances, yes. So, Doc, mental health is to me, at least, it's that ability to be able to vent, to have a conversation with somebody that that conversation is
But
not
what's
going
the
beyond
goal?
that person, but that person is trained in having those conversations
Yes.
from a self-help standpoint.
Right. Okay. So now, in regards to mental health is often based, if it's not organic, meaning that there's a natural causation of that, like altered brain chemistry in the case of manic depressive and schizophrenia, or something like traumatic brain injury, then it's behavioral based, meaning that the behavior is learned, and because the behavior is learned and followed, it causes adverse effects on you, impacting your ability, your abilities and your quality of life. So being in an environment, certain environments are traumatic. You know, we always talk about ACEs, right? We talk about ACEs, but the biological basis of ACEs is often not discussed. And you know the biological underlying reasons for ACEs? For people dealing with that, because it alters a child's brain chemistry and body chemistry as they develop. That trauma impacts them.
One of the things that I will do and that I won't do is one in particular, because I'm not trained in the areas of law. I won't even get into that discussion. Mental health, I'll defer to Doc because he has way more experience than me.
Yes.
So with that being said, there's nothing that I can say to rebut any of that.
No, I'm not saying it to rebuttal.
No. What I'm saying,
yeah.
what I'm saying is, I don't go and venture myself in the areas that I don't have the expertise. That's why we just sitting up there listening and standing up. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And so you talked about mental health. We talked about diseases. Miss Wynn, I mean, I know we've been taking up all the time here, but what's your thoughts? I mean, because when we talk about health disparities, we've talked about environmental, we've talked about obesity, we've talked about, and Doc, I'm going to defer to Doc because Doc talked about mental health. I can't talk about that because I don't have the skill set.
Correct.
But with all that being said, and we talked about environmental factors as well, one of the other ones that we did talk about is, unfortunately, in impoverished communities, you have food deserts. And people say, what is a food desert? Food desert being a community that doesn't have a Publix or Winn-Dixie based in that community.
Yeah.
Therefore, that community is based on habits, based on accessibility, based on budget. A lot of times, they're going to the fast food restaurants.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what's your thoughts, Miss? And fast food is not good for you.
Yes. And you know, I when you say food and poverty, I remember living with my grandmother, and there used to be a fruit truck, a vegetable truck, fresh fruit, vegetables that used to come in the neighborhood. And now you have to go outside your neighborhood just to get the fresh fruits and vegetables. So you can go up to the truck and say, hey, I want some carrots and green beans and all of this right off the truck. And now everything is almost like frozen. You don't get that freshness of the vegetables anymore.
The fast, when you say frozen, yeah, you can put some green beans in the microwave in this plastic bag, and a lot of people consider that fresh
Fresh
yeah, fresh vegetables.
Yeah. So and not only that, with also the food pantries around here, they're low stock on food for those areas.
There's a demand, but the one thing I will say about the food pantries, they've been generous. You see quite a few of them that have grown and in different partnerships. I mean, the one that we all know about, and Miss Wynn, you familiar with, Second Harvest Food Bank.
Second Harvest, excellent organization.
Yes.
They often have in fresh fruit.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a lot of their service population. They get access to that fresh fruit, poultry, and dairy and things like that. It's not a lot of junk food, believe it or not. A lot of people don't know that.
Oh,
But
that's good. That's
I've
good.
volunteered over there for numerous years, and I love Second Harvest. I love the
Doc,
organization.
what about the farmers markets that rotate in
Yeah, yeah,
downtown city of
yeah.
Orlando, downtown city of Apopka? Doc, where you're at, do they have a farmers market over there?
Oh yeah, we go on Saturdays and we get fresh apples and vegetables. My wife, she a yardie, so we'll go get the Jamaican yams and all of that kind of stuff. And
But
and
what about the areas that the older generation that does not have that
And
transportation?
thank you for bringing it up because that's what I was going to say to you
and
and
see, and
Doc.
that's that, and again,
We got to stay focused on our topics, and
yeah,
because we're talking about farmers market and things of that nature, to the both
yeah.
of you, I would
But
ask, with that population that you talk about, and Doc, with those young people, how
they
do you
they
get?
are, because many of the areas around them are what's considered food deserts, meaning that nutritional first rate food is not readily available for them to shop. And like Miss Wynn said, now they have to go. You have to go out your neighborhood and go get it. You got to go up the road, and a lot of the kids that need this nutrition, they don't drive. They're underage, so they can't avail themselves. Even if they had money, many of them can't avail themselves because they lack the ability to get there. You wouldn't send your 11-year-old 5 miles up the road to Walmart to get fresh vegetables.
Then that's going to take you back to the topic with the health disparity, with the obesity, because you don't have that in the neighborhood and you're going to those fast food restaurants, then you're getting obese and developing that
To
and,
that
and, and not
topic,
only
to
that,
you
you
and
go to
Doc.
the little red store or the yellow store. I ain't gonna say no brand names, that are conveniently now on every corner in economically suppressed neighborhoods, and those things are really manufactured. Most of it contains high levels of sugar, sodium, and things that are adverse to the diet.
Okay, but with that being the case, and I mean, we're having a real conversation about, we're talking about young people, and I mean, we're building the model, and I appreciate you talking about older, elderly individuals, because those are individuals that are more apt to say, yes, if I had it, I would cook it.
Yes.
But then to you and Doc, we're talking about young people, and I will be the first to admit, when I was younger, if you gave me the option to go get some fresh vegetables versus me running to Burger King and McDonald's,
You're gonna go to
I'm
Burger
going.
King.
I'm going to Burger. So it's behaviors that we
Yes.
have to.
But
Absolutely.
but also
Absolutely.
also think about this. This young this young person we're looking to mentor more than likely has a close relationship with that senior citizen who is often the head of that household. So if they're restricted in their access to healthy food, that's going to trickle down. That's
Doc,
going to impact that child.
Doc, you. But I like that. But I'm just wondering, Doc, do you think this younger generation has that level of connectivity with their elders? Do
I
you
I
really believe
think
that?
I think some of them have no choice because that parent is often in a compromised lifestyle. I'll say, in many instances, that person is all could be incarcerated, could be dealing with addiction or mental health, and that grandparent has to step in and step up and become the island or the source of the stablest environment that they can provide to that child.
But that is why we're having this conversation right now in terms of building the characteristics, providing the information, the education from a mentoring standpoint to that young person. And all the factors that we just talked about, yeah, they contribute to that. But before we get lost on time, because we're down to about 10 minutes left, I want us to, because this topic, man, we could actually do a whole show on this when we talk about family instability. And so when we talk about family instability, and one of the things that we see there's a major initiative regarding responsible fatherhood.
Yes.
I don't know where
Yes.
else to begin as we begin and we talk about family instability. Well, one of the things I'll kick it off with is the fact that you have situations where there's family units that are absent a man in that home.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say all you want to say, but I truly believe in some situations, maybe the mother and father didn't work out and they don't need to be in the same household, but you can still have family stability with both parents co-parenting and giving that child
Right.
what they need from a moral
Yes.
standpoint.
And that love
Right.
standpoint.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Doc.
Because I really believe that the key to it is, I'm sorry about that. I'm trying to reduce my feedback, but I think the key thing is we've got to go into these communities and begin to re-educate folks and change the narrative as to what parenting is, and in some kind of way to create a accountability.
Well, Doc, and I'm breaking this thing down because I see what we're doing, and when we say change the narrative, I want to stick with that, because we can talk about a whole bunch of things when it comes to family instability. So, Ms. Wynn, I'm gonna pass it back to Doc because I see he getting situated. But if we talked about changing the narrative, so what are we changing the narrative from to begin with?
We're
I think
changing.
What?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think it's more or less like raising that child of yours. How do you raise that child being a single parent? Where are you getting your values from? Was it almost like a repeat pattern?
So you already hit on one thing because we've seen a generation of kids having kids.
Yes.
So there's been a break in the linkage. So Doc, when we talk about family instability, and I want to stick with, you mentioned changing the narrative. Doc, what are we changing the narrative from?
We're changing the narrative from what we embrace as culture. We have a negative mindset, and I sent you that excellent video of rapper D1 talking about that very thing, where many of these rappers are selling a dream of street life that they themselves don't live
Doc, that's
or
what
have
you
never
sent me,
lived.
right?
Huh?
You
Yeah.
talking about what?
Yeah. And that's what we got to combat, because right now our kids are look at what's fed to them to glorify or emulate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you have women getting on social media talking about they're a bad bee and calling each other bees, that becomes very common.
That becomes very common, but then again, and I want us to be real succinct. I want to kind of keep passing the baton, but Doc hit it on the head when we talk about changing the narrative. Changing the narrative. See, I could have just let it slide and say, okay, what should the narrative be? But I wanted us to go further down the creek to what are we changing it from? And Doc just hit it right on the head. We're changing it from some of the absurdities that are taking place, that it's all right for a young lady or a young man or an old man or older woman to go out there and act a fool and think that these children
It's
should
okay.
emulate that
Yeah.
behavior.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Wynn, what?
Woo, that's a good one, changing that narrative, because I want to say it's your environment, what you see. And it's like, how do we get the parents to change the narrative? And doing that, they'll say, oh, I've seen it. My mom did it. She turned out okay. Or my dad did it. He turned out okay. But he didn't turn out okay if he's incarcerated.
And it's all, I believe in second chances, but there could have been some things that could have prevented that.
Yes.
Okay, but let me ask y'all this: how many other cultures allow or place the primary mentors of their children to be felons?
Say that
Or-
again.
Maybe what?
What other cultures allow the mentors that have access to their children to be felons.
I know exactly. I know exactly what I'm going. I know exactly.
Okay, and so we have to think about that. We this is in essence, in a nutshell, what we tell our kids. You can mess up and then make up. Because we got people that go in and say, well, you know, I did 10 years. Don't be like me. Okay, we're putting those as an example. We're making that the holy grail.
And Doc, I hear where you're going, and I repeat again, I do believe in second chances. I do believe that there are people out there that can use their life experience to help turn somebody around. But I do also believe, think about all of those people out there, and you know, usually, and I know I have certain conversations. Some folks say I rely on the faith community too much. I do, but I will say too, you got folk out there who've never been in those incidents, Doc, that we're talking about, and why should they be discounted?
I'm not saying they should be
No,
discounted.
I'm not saying that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm agreeing.
They should not, but we should be teaching the ethical process of succeeding. We should not be making it seem as if you got to mess up to move up. And I'm not against people who've been incarcerated or gotten into legal trouble being mentors, but it needs to be in the right perspective. And far too many of what we have as role models have. I know this. I've looked at this phenomenon a long time. Okay, this ain't new to me. And what I found out is often those people who are trying to mentor people, they really need male mentoring themselves because they have some serious deficit. And what we're doing is we're telling those kids and showing these kids this is what to aspire to. Okay, would think about this. The life lessons that they often get from a Rod Love will be totally different from someone who is struggling with the weight of the choices of what they made in their life.
And Doc, and coming back full circle, and Miss Wynn, let me go ahead. I'm gonna defer to you first. Go ahead.
I hear what you're saying, but then that individual that has a record and they're mentoring a kid and they see that kid going in that direction that he went in, you have more, I think, obligation or mentoring to stop that young kid from going in that same direction.
And to that end, and here's something that Doc was saying. I don't subscribe to glorifying, Doc, just kind of, and I know these may not be your words, but I think you got individuals out there who set the example that they've been walking that straight and narrow. They need to be recognized for the effectiveness that they're doing. And yeah, there's some folk that are that have made mistakes and they're stepping up. But Doc, this brings me full circle to Charles Barkley. You remember when he was in the NBA?
Yeah.
And remember that commercial, that Nike commercial?
He said, "I'm not a role model."
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
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 And then he said,
Yeah.
what else did he say, Doc? He
I
said
forgot.
parents. He
Yeah,
said
parents, teachers.
Parents need to be
the role
role
model.
models
The
for their
role
own
model.
kids. Stop looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but then
and-
that's when you have a lot of kids don't have their parents around. So if your parents not around, where's your role model in your household?
Right there, we need to pump the brakes. Then we need to find out why the parents ain't around. Those aren't nobody. Listen, nobody's responsible for your children being raised but you. I'm
you.
sorry.
You're right.
That's
You're
that's
right.
the reality
You're
of it.
right.
Okay.
You're right.
I don't find other people's kids cute, dizzy, and all of that. I'm not going to take care of them. Okay. I don't care about. Listen, Dr. Polite don't care about your kid.
Hey,
Not in the
you
way
know-
that you do.
Yeah, you're
and
right.
I'm not going to tell anybody
Yeah.
that.
Hey,
Now,
hey,
I
to
can
the-
give them some advice, but I'm not going to take on the weight of parenting them.
Them.
That's
to the
your
sit-down-
responsibility.
to the
If you
sit-down
can't do
audience,
it, don't have kids.
to the sit-down audience, hey, this kind of conversation that you're hearing now is what you're going to hear every Monday from 6 o'clock to 6:45. I have less than 30 seconds left. What I want to say to you is tune in next week, same time, same channel. This is the conversation, unless we have a special guest, that we need your help
Yes.
to help us go through this list of what can actually strengthen young people in their communities. Hey, tune in next week on the Sit Down with Rod Love, Miss Wynn, and Dr. Light, and you're going to be hearing more of this conversation. Hey, we look forward to having you back. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Have a good evening.